Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. Tiki here.
And Jacob Wile too.
And we're back for a roundup of 2018 summer movies.
Woo!
Yeah. Jacob, actually, three surprisingly really good summer movies in their own right. For wildly different reasons. Wildly different reasons.
You can say that.
Okay, so we're going to start off with Mission Impossible Fallout, which you and I both saw yesterday. And then we're going to move on to Teen Titans Go to the movies, which I saw, you haven't. Those two are both going to be spoiler-free discussions. And then, Jacob, then we're going to kind of move on to the cream of the crop of the show, what we're really here to talk about, because we've been talking about it off air for a couple weeks now. And I finally got a chance to sit down and watch it. And that is, my God, Hereditary. So here's the deal here, folks. We'll feed you your dessert before we get to the vegetables. Hereditary is definitely the vegetables, but we need to have a conversation about Hereditary on the channel. I mean, it's wow. Like, yeah, that needs to happen. This is one of the most brutal. I even hate to call it a horror film. I think it's like domestic horror is about as far as I'll go with it. It's just holy mother of God, just the performances. The
uh,
performances alone in that movie are terrifying, Jacob, let alone any thematic implications.
oh yeah.
All right. So basically, folks, what we're gonna do is we're gonna do kind of like a downward trajectory from like one of the most crowd pleasing movies of the year to the movie that ended up with a D+ cinema score. All right, so let's start with the crowd pleaser, Jacob. What did you think of Mission Impossible Fallout?
Whoo boy. It was intense.
This is one of the best action movies of the decade.
Probably of all time even.
I'm not going to go as far as to say all time because I feel like it needs to sit in a little with me. But I will definitely go as far as to say it stands on its own against probably the best of the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies and also like the best Nolan movies in terms of like this generation's like Jacob, I will say probably the one action movie this decade this doesn't eclipse is probably Mad Max Fury Road, just because Mad Max Fury Road has such an insane design aesthetic to it. But Mission Impossible Fallout is yeah, I mean, I heard the hype. I'm not even the biggest fan of the Mission Impossible movies. There's several of them that I haven't even seen, like the first two, for example. I haven't seen the fifth one either. I saw Ghost Protocol recently. I saw the third one, and up until recently, those were the only two I'd seen. So I'm not really big and well versed in this series. But yeah, I mean, Mission Impossible Fallout is just it's so much fun, Jacob. That's what really
I'm,
strikes me about it.
I'm,
That's the word I use to describe it. It's an intelligent movie. It expects the audience to pay attention, which I appreciate and respect, but it's fun. It's just top to bottom. It is so much goddamn fun.
and considering it actually incorporates like several characters and elements from Rogue Nation, it's actually kind of interesting that you don't really need to remember that much about that movie to understand this one.
Jacob, I was actually fine. Like plot wise, I thought I was going to be lost going into this movie. Jacob, that's the one thing I was worried about. Like
Like I said,
going into this movie, I thought it was going to be 2.5 hours of gobbledygook in terms of plot. Like I was there to see Cruz's stunts. All right, I was there to see Cruz's stunts and the Cavill mustache. Like those were the two big draws for me, Jacob. But what I got was like, yeah, I mean, this movie does do a very good job of like, even if you haven't seen the other movies, you're gonna it does a great job of setting up everything and not really wasting any time with the
it,
storytelling. Like
it, pre-
everything in this movie is really set up and
it pretty much gets straight into the it pretty much gets straight into the action and doesn't let up.
yeah,
And they don't.
I love how the first moments of the movie start very modestly with Ethan in that little dingy hotel room
It's kind
and
of like
then
the
the
It's kind of like honoring the movie's roots too.
It is, and, then the message self-destructs in the very kind of mundane way where it just, like, smoke comes out of it, and, and in a way, like you said, Jacob, this movie is almost kinda like stripping the series back down to its core fundamentals. It's basically just like, "Okay, the bad guys have nukes, we need to get the nukes, go."
it's
It's very Mad Max Fury Road in that way, Jacob. That's what I really like about this movie. It
a,
reminded me of Mad Max Fury Road in that it's just like there's one objective and they stick to that objective the whole movie. There are shifting loyalties, of course, much like any Mission Impossible movie, and won't get into that here because we'll keep that spoiler free for anyone who hasn't seen the
it's
movie yet.
it's an it's an action movie with both brains and brawn.
Jacob, I am so impressed with this movie. Like the more I think about it, especially because it's 2.5 hours long, for someone like me who doesn't usually like action movies that are just straight up action, and for someone who's not a big fan of the Mission Impossible series in general and hasn't even seen the last movie before this one, my God, this movie went by so fast. Like, I was so invested in it from beginning to end, and not just because of the Tom Cruise stunts, though the Tom Cruise stunts are absolutely crazy and bananas and need to be admired. And I think it's time we give that guy like an honorary, like, stunt Oscar or something like that.
Because he does majority of his own stunts.
Jacob, that all the helicopter bits, the bit where he's hanging off the side of the building, the bit where he's mountain climbing, holy crap.
Yeah, the fight at the end of the cliff. I'm not gonna say against who, but they actually shot that on an actual cliff. Like they really went all out with the stunts in this one.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the main draw, of course, with this movie, but the good thing about this movie is that it really puts together a good plot that really keeps you invested. It reminds me of Skyfall in that way. It's very much like I think it's an even better movie than Skyfall though, but it is very much the Mission Impossible equivalent to Skyfall.
It's pretty much the action services the plot and vice versa.
Right, right.
It's not action for the sake of having action. There's like a purpose behind it. If you get what I'm saying. What? Oh.
Okay, sorry about that, folks. Jacob kind of that would be more appropriate in the hereditary part of this podcast that something like that were to happen. Um,
Stupid God voice.
Jacob, couldn't you saved your God voice for hereditary?
That would have been more
It
appropriate.
would have been way more appropriate, man. Come on.
Well, who's to say it won't still happen?
All right.
But did you hear anything what I said though?
Not really.
I said it's not action for the sake of having action. It's the action services the plot and vice versa.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Let me see. Do you want to talk about Cavill?
I mean, we can't talk about well, I'm sure why not.
So I feel like Cavill is very much kind of like a 1950s kind of like strong man in this movie. And I really appreciate his presence. And I really appreciate the whole movie you're kind of questioning like at first he and Ethan kind of hate each other, but then but then they kind of get into a situation where they respect each other. Um Throughout the movie though, you're kind of second guessing if what this guy's up to, what this guy's real motive is, even when there's revelations that make it seem like he's like, oh, okay, that's definitely what he's up to. You're still second guessing him, but that's the intriguing part of his character, though, Jacob, is that at face value, he seems like muscle, right? He seems like just kind of like the burly strong man that's going to be there to kick ass and take names where Ethan Hunt can't. But he ends up being so much more than that, and that is the makings of a memorable character for me, Jacob. Like I'm really impressed with the character work, especially on Cavill's end.
Oh heck yeah. He's a really fully realized character.
All right, I thought the terrorist syndicate was really well handled in this one. Again, I feel like this movie is streamlined. That's the thing that I really appreciate about this movie. I feel like some critics have said that this movie's a little overly complicated, but I gotta say, the thing I appreciate about this movie is it's very much just like bad guys have nukes, we need to get nukes, the end. It's like it's very simple.
I mean, I guess it could be like where like the whole Ilsa thing being overly complicated, but it's explained fairly well.
I mean, like I said, Jacob, I didn't even watch the movie where Ilsa was introduced, and I understood it just fine. So, you
Yeah,
know,
I mean, like just a couple simple lines of dialogue explain the whole situation. That's one thing that can be described about this movie. It's concise. It knows when to use its dialogue and how to use it.
let's see. So, Simon Pegg is of course delightful as always.
Oh yeah, Benji's always a treat to watch.
And there were some moments with him where he was in some real peril, and I thought the series might do some ballsy things with him and kill him off, maybe.
Yeah, I was almost afraid too. I was like, no, Benji.
Luther's got some great moments in this one.
Oh yeah, the always great Ving Rhames.
Uh-huh.
Like, Cobra Bubbles. Luther's definitely a cooler name, and maybe not as cool as Cobra Bubbles.
But
Because
yeah, I mean, look, folks, at the end of the day, the great thing about this movie is that pretty much everyone who's going to come here is going to come here for the stunts. But what they're going to leave with is a very, very solid action espionage story that has a really intricate villain plot that goes a lot of different directions, but is if you're paying attention, you actually listen to the dialogue, it'll make sense. Like if
Eh,
you're just spacing out, right? Like if you're just zoning out in the parts where there's not shooting happening, then yeah, of course you're not gonna
and it
get it.
actually
But
and it keeps you gripped. It keeps you gripped and on the edge of your seat until the very end.
yeah, but what I'm saying, Jacob, is this is a movie that respects its audience, and it's a movie that respects its audience paying attention. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, it definitely reminds me of a Christopher Nolan movie in that way.
Oh yeah,
Okay. All right. Anything else to say about Mission Possible Fallout, Jacob?
music was great too.
It was. It really was. All the bongo drums.
Oh yeah, I mean that's pretty much the only thing I can say without delving into major spoiler lane.
Of course, of course. Okay, so Jacob, Teen Titans Go to the Movies.
The one movie here I have not seen yet.
So I'm gonna make this quick, Jacob, for your sake. I had no intention of seeing this until the Tomato scores were really high and stayed high after Comic-Con, surprisingly. And I gotta say, Jacob, let's give Warner Brothers Animation Group a seal of quality here because Warner Brothers Animation Group is on a trajectory of having some really, really quality animation. This movie included.
That's
Um,
honestly, considering your previous rant about this series, that honestly did surprise me that you did like this movie.
Jacob, I actually like this movie quite a bit. And the reason why I like this movie a lot is this movie is so self-aware about the fact that people like me don't like Teen Titans, but people like me are also DC fans. And Jacob, I feel like this movie specifically was written for people like me because this movie has so many jabs at the original Teen Titans Go lineup, while at the same time kind of celebrating DC culture as a whole and also having fun with DC culture. The thing that I love about this movie, Jacob, is the fact that it basically takes the extended DC universe and explores it through the lens of Teen Titans Go. And because of that, we get a lot of wacky scenarios and we get just a ton of different references. Like Plastic Man is all over the place in this movie, just kind of popping up here and there. We get some hilarious stuff with Batman and Alfred. Unfortunately, I don't think Nicolas Cage is Superman. was as relevant to the plot as you were probably hoping he would be. If that's a like if Nicolas Cage's Superman is like a selling point for you, I wouldn't really go into this one. Like I'd go into this one more if you're just intrigued by the fact that a Teen Titans Go movie managed to get a really good Rotten Tomatoes score like I was. Jacob, the music, like it's rap music, but it's really, really fun, really catchy, like hip hop pop music. You know what I mean? And it's like they have a theme song, like a Teen Titans, like it's not the actual Teen Titans theme song or anything like that, but it's like a group rap where they all introduce themselves. And Jacob, I gotta say, in this rap, it's like it flows together so well, and the animation and um it's so much fun to watch, Jacob. This movie, the animation is really on point. It's definitely a step up from the series for sure. It's got so many loving references to the DC universe in it. Jacob, I'm going to go a step in a controversial direction that people are not going to like me for. I think this movie is on the same level with the Lego Batman movie and maybe even a little bit better.
Honestly, that wouldn't surprise me.
Will Arnett, of course, kind of crossing over with Lego Batman. Will Arnett plays Slade, and Slade is amazing in this movie. We get a great running joke of how they love to say Slade's name dramatically.
and how they call him Deadpool.
Yeah, of course, of
I do
course.
I do remember that much from the trailer.
Um,
Like, no, I'm pretty sure you're Deadpool.
I mean, Jacob, like, of course, I think, I think the meta narrative in this movie is really fun and really interesting. The fact that it's all about Robin trying to get his standalone solo movie, and that kind of divides the group. Um, like, god damn, Jacob, this movie is really good. It really is. It's very, very solid, and like, I'm not gonna say it's as good as the Lego movie. I'm not gonna say it's as good as Storks because I love Storks and that movie's an underrated gem from Warner Brothers Animation Group.
I'll definitely agree with you on Storks.
Yeah, hell yeah. But I will say it's probably a solid number 3 for me in terms of recent Warner Brothers Animation Group movies. Like, I definitely think it's better than the Lego Ninjago movie for sure, easily. And I will even suffice to say that Lego Batman is probably the better written and better voice acted and better, like, it's got more high production values and better animation and everything. But Jacob, I just had more fun consistently at Teen Titans Go than I did at Batman, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. I mean, they're completely different kinds of movies in a way. Like
Mhm.
they're fun and they're supposed to be fun in different ways.
All right. Now, Jacob, did you just say fun?
Yes, I said fun.
Tony Collette doesn't approve. All right,
Like,
folks. Now we move on to the main event of the night, which I just recently got a chance to see. Jacob, I'm not even gonna lie. I pirated this, arg. But Jacob, do you want to set this up because you actually saw it in theaters?
how do you want me to set this up?
I just attempt to give a synopsis of the madness that is this movie.
Okay, you mean like just like a brief like couple sentence synopsis?
Just attempt to. I'm kind of curious how you'll do.
Okay, okay,
Tony Collette's judging you.
okay, calm down, Tony.
She'll never calm down, Jacob.
I know, I noticed. But the way what's the name of the family again? I haven't seen the
Oh
movie.
God, I don't even know. Just call them the family.
And after the central family attends the funeral of the grandmother, which is I believe her name is Angie or Annie, I think her name is.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, Jacob, full spoilers with this one. All right, because this one's been out for over a month. If you guys don't want to hear us talk about it, just click away right now until you've actually seen the movie. But there's no way to talk about this one without full spoilers. There's really not.
Well, in the synopsis, I won't give away much.
Okay. Okay.
And they celebrate. They not celebrate, but they attend the funeral of their grandmother, who has recently of Annie's mother, who has recently passed away, and it has various different effects on the entire family. Where various odd things begin to happen afterwards, and it seemed like things have been going that way for an extremely long time. But things really take a turn for the worse when let's just end it. Let's just end the synopsis here. When Peter the son goes to a party.
Yeah. Okay. Let's so that party scene and then the car scene,
Oh yeah,
um, that's gonna go down in history.
probably.
It's gonna go down in history as like one of the most disturbing scenes in any horror movie.
That one's. I was like when I first saw the trailers for it, I saw like an Exorcist for a new age. I was like, there's no way. Then I saw that. I was like, yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like it's so visceral. But
So
Jacob, here's
you
the
saw.
thing about
I'm sure you saw that trailer too. The one that said Exorcist for a new age.
I didn't the thing about this movie is that I went in completely blind.
Well, I mean, I just saw the trailer for it, and that's what got me. And it said, and one of the reviews said, the Exorcist for a new age.
Uh,
I was like, at first, I was like, yeah, that might be a bit much, but I haven't seen the movie, so I can't really say. And then the telephone pole scene happened, and then it said full spoilers here, right?
yep.
The shot of Charlie's decapitated head, I was like, yep, definitely Exorcist level.
Okay, hold on though. Let's build to that because the build to that is just out of this world.
Oh
Where
yeah.
we see Peter in the car and he's just like staring off into the distance. He's completely shell shocked.
And because
I love the shot where he tries to look into the rearview mirror and he can't.
yeah, and he's still like stoned out of his mind too.
Uh-huh. And so he drives home, he gets into bed, and then we get that shot, Jacob. And this is the most haunting shot in the movie for me.
First, we get the shot of Annie screaming her lungs
Well,
out.
no, I mean before that, we just hear Annie we see Peter in bed and it's obvious he hasn't been sleeping all night. And then we hear Annie get out, go into the car, and then the screaming begins, and then it just ramps up to 11 because we see her just hurling herself on the floor saying, I want to die, I want to die. And then just basically being just as hysterical during the funeral as the camera like pans down into the ground. Jacob, that and then of course what happens after that, Jacob?
The head.
The head, yes. So it's not just the head. It's not just seeing the head. I feel
I
like
know. I know. That's just the most visceral part of that scene.
right, but I feel like what makes it so visceral though is the fact that I honestly feel like the most visceral part of the whole scene is Toni Collette's reaction to the scene. And then
Uh,
the head is just kind of like the visual reminder.
like yeah, like it's like it makes you go, oh, that's what happened.
Mhm. All right, Jacob, I don't want to go beat by beat through the whole movie or anything, so we'll just kind of go through some of the fucked up highlights of it, I guess.
Yeah, basically, if you want to say fucked up highlight, it's pretty much the entire movie.
Yeah, I know. The whole movie kind of builds up this whole sense of dread and just like, oh my god, I just want to get out of here. You know what I mean? It's very much a challenge to watch, which is why it's like not going to be in my top 10 movies of the year or anything like that. It's definitely not A Quiet Place, where A Quiet Place has been consistently in my top 1 or 2 of the year. Um, but it's definitely a movie that's going to leave an impact on me regardless, and I'm going to try to keep it in my top 20 or top 25 because I feel like it is an important horror movie for the genre. It is a very landmark genre picture. It's just the thing about it is it's so abrasive, and I believe in film being escapist entertainment to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next big scene is the dinner scene.
As we're currently seeing.
Yeah, and this dinner scene is the one that I heard about that kind of like made me see the movie in the first place. Like I kept on hearing about people saying like, "Oh my god, you have to see the dinner scene." Like, "Holy crap, the Hereditary dinner scene is just off the charts." And I was like, "What is the deal with this dinner scene?" And I watched it, Jacob, and once again, I feel like the true horror of this movie does not come from the brutal violence and from the visceral imagery, and there is brutal violence and visceral imagery. It comes from the performances. It comes from the guttural, just from the sheer loathing and hate coming off of these people towards each other, mother and son.
Like it's pretty much made very clear early on that Annie really isn't the most secure in the head.
So let's talk about that, Jacob, because that's another element of the movie that's just sickening and disturbing, but for me ticks boxes because I don't want to get into too much personal stuff with this, but suffice to say, I've known people who are mentally ill. I'm mentally ill myself to a certain degree. I've been around the block with this sort of stuff, and so the real life details, like the father that starved himself, and then the brother that strangled himself because his mother was trying to put people in him. By the way, she actually was trying to put people in him. We'll get back to that later.
Yeah.
I don't know, just like the family history, just that scene it early on in the support group where she's just kind of laying out the family history, that kind of chills me to the bone, like right off the bat. It's just like kind of this chilling thesis statement of like, okay, nothing good is going to come from this.
Nope. You
Like
don't even
this is
and
this is
you
almost
almost
kind
don't
of like the
you almost
watership down of horror movies in a way. It's just like, okay, this is gonna be nothing but bad.
and a lot of it you don't even realize is somewhat foreshadowing.
Well, yeah, that's the cool thing about this movie is that it's pretty much all foreshadowing. Jacob, I have a feeling that this movie's going to get compared to Donnie Darko. I think it's more accessible than Donnie Darko, but I think it's got that same level of like weird, like what the fuck is going on and kind of like off-settling nature to it that Donnie Darko does.
I've never actually seen Donnie Darko.
I don't, yeah, I've only seen it a couple times. I don't, I'm not crazy about it myself, but of course it does have a huge cult following. So,
Well, I know my sister used to watch it.
mhm. um, okay,
But
then after the dinner scene, I mean, we get the reveal of the sleepwalking, and then the moment where Tony Collette almost killed Peter with the paint thinner, and that is just like, and a lot of this is told in dialogue, Jacob. And that's kind of one of the things I like about this movie is that it does kind of go against the show don't tell philosophy, but it kind of waves its flag where it's like, yeah, we don't need visuals to display this. Like just hearing about it is disturbing enough. And just like honestly, it's one of those things where it's like sometimes what I like in movies is if characters can tell the story good enough, then we don't have to see the visual. Our mind paints the visual for us.
are you referring to the nightmare scene?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And for a moment, I thought it was actually going on at that moment. Like it
Mhm.
wasn't even a nightmare.
That's another thing with this movie is that it very much plays with perception and reality. I've heard a couple theories that this movie all takes place in in the dollhouse, and it's kind of Tony Collette's character trying to rationalize the situation while she's the only one left alive.
That's a weird theory.
It is, but I mean, just considering the opening shot literally like goes into the dollhouse and then becomes Peter's room.
It is. Not saying it's not plausible.
Uh-huh. All right, let's see. And then, I mean, my God, Jacob, just what do you think of the seance scenes? Because those are some of the most intense for me.
Right, which one are you referring to? The one where
Just all of them.
the one where the sun, especially the one with Charlie being summoned.
Well, the one with Charlie is incredibly intense, yes. But the one with Joan, that kind of sets up the Charlie one with Joan's grandson. That one's also intense just because of the way that Toni Collette's reacting to it.
It's very, like I said, her reactions are spot on for sure.
Again, the scariest parts of this movie are Toni Collette's reactions to things. She is the scariest part of this movie. It's a fearless performance. It truly is.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, then we get the actual oh my god, this Charlie scene is just, oh, Jacob, I hate that moment in a good way. In a good way. I hate the moment where it actually works and she actually gets into Toni Collette and she's just like, why is everyone afraid of me? Why are you all afraid of me? What's going on? I don't like this. What's going on? No, no. And she's just like, and then everyone's just like freaking out. Like, God damn, Jacob, that is a possession. Like, that is a terrifying possession. What I love about this movie is that it's a possession movie where whatever the hell entity is trying to get possessed doesn't know what is going on. You know what I mean? It's like the entity is almost the victim in this.
Pretty much everyone in this movie is a victim.
Yeah,
Except
especially Gabriel Byrne.
Yeah. Yeah.
Seriously, I feel so bad for Gabriel Byrne in this movie. He's the father, and he's just like, throughout the whole movie, he's just like trying to keep it together, trying to keep it together. Like he's just like,
He's pretty much the only one that doesn't suffer a mental breakdown.
right, right. And he's just like, no, I'm not gonna play. And the second that he's like, I'm not gonna play these games with you anymore, Annie, you need help. It's like dead, just spontaneous burst into flames, dead.
Ugh, jeez. I mean, like, that was. I mean, like, he's the only one who didn't suffer a mental breakdown. Yet he was completely wrong about everything that was going on.
And then the actor who plays Peter, I wanna highlight him too, because he also played the kid who turned into the Rock in the new Jumanji movie. And holy crap, I mean, you want to talk about fearless. This kid is fearless. I love how they can get a 16-year-old kid, a 16-year-old teenage boy to resort to just weepy tears, and it works. It works with the moment. It sets up just how horrific everything going on around him is.
Ugh.
Um, I love that side. Like, you never see males in horror movies getting emotional like that, and I love that realistic quality to it, Jacob. I can't even tell you how much I appreciate that. Um, I think with Peter, there's a couple moments in particular that really stick out to me. Of course, there's the moments in the classroom where he's smoking the bowl under the bridge, and he's kind of experiencing the same symptoms that Charlie felt. He's like, my throat's getting bigger. I can't breathe. And then, of course, there's that moment where he sees his own reflection and his own reflection smiling at him in kind of an evil way. That's terrifying.
Not to mention the constant.
Uh-huh. Of course, of course. But then the big tour de force performance, Jacob, maybe the biggest tour de force of the whole movie in terms of just physical acting is the moment where he kind of gets possessed in the classroom and he starts banging his head against the desk over and over again and starts just screaming at the top of his lungs and flailing around the classroom. Jacob, you want to talk about just guttural sheer terror on a realistic level, and something that mental illness is definitely capable of bringing onto someone. That scene right there, holy shit, Jacob, I've been that person, all right? I have been that person in that situation. Maybe not as severe as banging my head on the desk over and over, but I've definitely had public meltdowns like this. So to see a horror movie depict something like this in that regard and frame it in terms of mental illness, Jacob, this movie's just it's another level in terms of scary. It's not a scary movie. It's a disturbing movie.
Definitely disturbing.
And then of course, probably the big other moment before we get into the final moments of this movie, which are just crazy all the way around. The moment where Tony Collette is just like, I never wanted to be your mother. I tried to miscarriage over and over, but it wouldn't work. And then the kid's reaction, just like Peter's reaction, just like, why would you try to kill me? You tried to kill me. It's just like, and they're just both screaming at each other. And Jacob, it rips my heart out. It really does. It's just like, it's so hard to watch, but in a good way, in a way where it's just like me as a film fan and me as a fan of what film can do and the transportative nature of film, both positive and negative. This movie is an experience, god damn it. This movie is something that I have not seen before in a horror movie. Just the sheer guttural family drama being way, way, way more scary than the actual demonic possession stuff.
Definitely. And honestly, I think it was more compelling before the whole deal. Honestly, I thought it was more compelling when it was just mental illness instead of being an actual possession.
Yep, which is why, unfortunately, I think the movie kind of falls apart in the third act.
Like it's like, don't get me wrong, like the part where like Peter wakes up and he can just faintly see Annie in the background. Don't get me
Oh,
wrong.
that's terrifying. Yeah, yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong, that's all great stuff and all, but and the demon stuff and the possession stuff actually is foreshadowed throughout the entire movie.
It is. It is.
But I still think,
Stuff is foreshadowed in very subtle ways.
but I still think it was like I still think it. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's still a great movie and all, but I think the demonic possession was like a bit of like a cop out. It's like it kind of like negates like no, it's not mental illness. It's just people being driven insane by a demon.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I feel like the movie itself was doing such a good job of just getting to the root of the terror that mental illness causes in families and how it just tears people apart and how helpless you can feel, how there's nothing you can do to help these people because they don't run on their own realities. You know what I mean? They don't run on your reality. They run in an entirely different sphere of reality. And yeah, I agree, Jacob. By the end of the movie, I was kind of worn out. Like, I think the last big scare, like the last huge moment of scare, comes when Tony Collette frickin' saws off her own head with a piano wire.
Yeah,
Like, holy crap, are you kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me?
yeah, that was a bit. Ugh.
I love the way that it starts slow and then she gets like really deliberate and she's just like shooting daggers into Peter, just staring him dead in the eyes as she's doing it.
Almost like saying you caused this.
Right, right. Oh god, it's just oh.
That's
However,
basically,
Jacob, after that, I feel like as soon as Peter jumps out of the window, that's when the movie starts to tank. Like I almost wish that we didn't go into the treehouse at the end. Because at the end of the movie, we just kind of get this big exposition dump like, you are the god of mischief and you must be very confused, but you requested a male body and you had to go through a female body first, but now you're in a male body, so and I don't know, Jacob. The whole thing about it, like you're right, it is set up and there is very clever foreshadowing throughout the movie. It's probably gonna make for an interesting rewatch on my end, that's for sure. And I do plan on rewatching this movie, even though it's a terrifically upsetting movie. I think it's still a very visceral movie that's memorable enough to want to watch through it again, especially with all the foreshadowing and everything. But I don't know, Jacob, just something about that ending just doesn't sit right with me. I wish that, as you said, I wish the ending would have been more conclusive to the whole mental illness side of things instead of just like, oh, by the way, you're totally in a cult. This was totally a cult the whole time. Um, Jacob, you there, buddy? Okay, well, it's kind of like wrapping up my thoughts on Hereditary, folks. It's just a very visceral movie. It's incredibly hard to watch. I mean, it really is. But if you can get through it, just Toni Collette absolutely deserves an Oscar nomination for sure. I mean, my God, she just goes through the ringer in this movie. It's just a roller coaster ride in this movie. But with that in mind, folks, I was just kind of wrapping up here. So Jacob kind of dropped out at a convenient time, I guess. Thank you so much for watching. I've also seen Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again, but I can't really comment on that movie because I haven't seen the original Mamma Mia yet. But I enjoyed Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again for what it was. It had some really elaborate dance numbers. It had some really fun musical sequences. I can't say too much about the characters because I don't really know the characters. But yeah, it was a fun time at the movies. I'll admit that. You know, I have one of those theaters where I can get a glass of red wine and you know, enjoy myself, enjoy a nice alcoholic beverage while I'm watching a movie like Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again. But yeah, with that in mind, folks, I think I'm going to go ahead and sign out for the evening. Yellow. Yellow. Jacob, buddy, I don't know what's going on there, man, but I've pretty much said my piece on Hereditary at this point, so I'm gonna sign out, okay? Okay. All right, sorry about the technical issues right at the end, folks, but it came at a good time at least, and thank you for joining us. Have a good night, and don't let Toni Collette intimidate you too much.